everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time for a second news video of the day. Yes, we are really living in very newsworthy times, which is surprising in a way, given the fact that there's far less wrestling going on. But that's just the way it is. Let's take a look at the headlines. First of all, the team formerly known as The Revival have faced backlash over their new name on social media. Next up, we take a look at a Raw storyline that could well have been quietly scrapped when nobody was really paying attention. And sadly, former WWE referee Jack Lotz has passed away at the age of 86. So first of all, let's talk about The Revival, or the team formerly known as The Revival. They've both got individual new names on Twitter, and if you've been following our news updates, or indeed just wrestling Twitter in general, you'll see that they've been teasing a new team name as well, The Revolt. Both members of the team tweeted out a video which had new music, a new logo, and this new name as well, teased to be The Revolt, and it was received largely positively, including by EC3, who replied saying, oh, it's much better than red bow ties and silly costumes, which is what those leaked documents showed that was probably the next plan for The Revival had they stayed in WWE. Yes, as you may have seen by now, it seems like the plan was, for whatever reason, to turn The Revival, the most old school tactical team in WWE for years, into a comedy duo. However, the response hasn't been entirely positive. In fact, in an independent promotion based out of North Carolina called PWX, it seems like there's already a team there called The Revolt who've been using this name for the past 5 years. The teammates in question go by the names of Caleb Conley and Zane Riley and are often joined by Man Scout Manning, and they've been pretty vocal about having already used this name. In fact, various people have been tweeting The Revival, or the team recently known as The Revival, saying, oh yeah, if you want ideas for merch, we've got plenty. We've been doing this for about half a decade now. And in fact, the link to Caleb Conley's Pro Wrestling Tees store has been shared around as well, alongside the hashtags Fear the Revolt and of course F the Revival. Now at first it may seem like this is a bit of an overreaction because of course wrestling is a huge industry with various different promotions, so many wrestlers involved in it, that of course names of moves and wrestlers and teams and shows and everything are going to be duplicated at one point or another just because you can't know everything that's going on. However, it should be pointed out that both, Dawson and Dash, or Harwood and Wheeler as they're now known, spend a lot of time in the Carolinas and I think are even from there, so maybe there's the implication that they really should have known this before pressing ahead with this new name, The Revolt. Now onto a report from Wrestling Inc., who are suggesting that WWE may have quietly scrapped a storyline on Raw just as it looked to be gaining a bit of steam. This all stems from the match between Bobby Lashley and Aleister Black at WrestleMania, where basically Bobby Lashley seemed to have the match won, only for Lana to interfere and change up the game plan and say hit Black with a spear. Obviously Lashley charged with a spear, and then Aleister Black hit him with the Black Mass, and that was enough to pick up the victory. And since then, tensions have been escalating between the kayfabe married couple, Lana and Bobby Lashley, with it seeming as though the storyline was going to progress towards an eventual split. But Wrestling Inc. are suggesting that there's a lot of speculation that this storyline may have just been scrapped, looking towards this week's Monday Night Raw as a bit of a clue. On the show this week, we saw Bobby Lashley in the gym area of the Performance Center, flipping a big tire, talking about how strong he is, flipping an even bigger tire, and talking about how strong he is. It was highbrow stuff. And Lana was there during these segments, and they seemed to be absolutely fine. All of the tension that had been built up in previous weeks seemed to have just been totally forgotten about. Now, of course, this could just be a week-long lapse where we just forget about the tension for a bit, and then it rears its head again once Lashley is in the ring, and she might cost him matches by accident again. Or it could be that the storyline has been scrapped. But why would WWE do that? Well, this is just my own personal speculation, but I reckon that maybe before Rusev was released, they'd planned maybe some kind of breakup and then reconciliation angle to get Lana and Rusev back together. Maybe it doesn't even have anything to do with Rusev, but the fact that Rusev was released last week and this week it seems like Lana and Lashley are on good terms in storyline again, it seems like a bit too much of a coincidence, doesn't it? Now let's talk about Cesaro, because Arn Anderson, who now of course works for AEW, has been suggesting on his podcast that Cesaro is really not treated fairly or given enough of a chance backstage in WWE. Arn said he's not a favourite guy, as you know, of the front office, for whatever reason that is. They're the only ones that know, because everyone else across the planet seems to think he's a superstar. Arn suggests that maybe it's Cesaro's ability to do incredible flashy moves and incredible feats of strength while being a heel. He says that he being Cesaro, he continued to get leaned on to stop doing all that stuff as a heel. It was just too flashy. Arn has also accused WWE management of cheating the audience by not allowing Cesaro to basically fulfill his potential and show us all what he can really, really do. And it's said by so many people, from people who were fans of his on the independent scene to those who have wrestled with him backstage, his peers and everyone. Everybody seems to say that if Cesaro got a chance, he would really grasp it and become a megastar, because he is apparently one of the best in the world. I'm saying apparently, we have seen glimpses of that in certain little matches where it's allowed to come out and shine. But for the most part, yeah, he's been kind of kept under lock and key. Now on to Impact Wrestling, because last night they ran the first of kind of a double pay-per-view sort of thing for their Rebellion show, which was originally actually meant to be a normal traditional pay-per-view, but because of the whole ongoing situation, they instead turned it into 2 weeks of free TV. It's just going to be 2 consecutive Impacts that are going to basically be that pay-per-view, even though it's not, you know, a pay-per-view by name anymore. Last night we saw the first half of that Rebellion show, and since then Sami Callihan has talked to Sports Illustrated about why working these television tapings is fine, even though we've got the ongoing situation and social distancing and all that stuff. Callihan says, the reason that I was 100% okay with doing that was because Impact took amazing care of us. From the time we got there to the time we left, I knew no one from our crew was going to be in any danger. He goes on, Impact took every precaution to make sure our TV taping was the safest TV taping going on right now. A little bit of shots fired there, perhaps. I put my entire trust in Impact Management to make sure we can all get taken care of. I've wrestled for every major wrestling company on the planet, and Impact Wrestling truly is a family. There's also some results to report on from the show itself. First of all, we saw a title change, and Willie Mack is the new X Division champion. His first reign with that belt. Now, if you're not familiar with the X Division, you may be looking at Willie Mack and thinking, he's a pretty big lad. What's he doing in the Cruiserweight division? But of course, those who are familiar with Impact or formerly of TNA will know that the X Division isn't necessarily about size or weight limits. For example, Samoa Joe was of course X Division champion. We also got a bit of a surprise return, as Tommy Dreamer and Rhino elsewhere on the card were taking on OVE, but of course there's 3 members in that OVE squad right now, or 4 if you include Sami Callihan, so they needed one more man to make up the numbers, and there was a mystery partner going into this match. Dreamer and Rhino's partner turned out to be Crazy Steve, who was formerly a member of the Decay stable alongside Abyss, and just generally a long-tenured Impact wrestler who recently left in the last few years. And Crazy Steve was able to help his teammates pick up the victory. Steve left Impact and in 2017 had a performance center tryout for WWE. He wasn't picked up, he wasn't signed, and then spent the past few years kind of making independent appearances here and there, oftentimes for Ohio Valley Wrestling, sometimes cropping up in the NWA as well, but now it seems like he's back in Impact. Next up, Chris Jericho was talking to Sportskeeda recently, and they asked him who he feels are the most underrated figures on the AEW roster, and he had some answers that, well, some of them were very interesting, some of them were maybe a little bit predictable. Let's take a look at what he said. Jericho often praises Sammy Guevara, we know that anyway, as he is his Inner Circle stablemate, but here he has compared someone else to Sammy Guevara. He says, I think MJF is a lot like Sammy. He's moving up the ladder and he's doing a great job at 24 years old. I think Darby Allin is the same. I think Jungle Boy has a huge upside, and I think Scorpio Sky has a huge upside. Now this is interesting because obviously MJF, Sammy, Darby and Jungle Boy are all pretty young. I think they're all in their sort of early to mid 20s, whereas Scorpio Sky has been around the block a few times since. And I'm not saying he doesn't have a tremendous upside and more to give in AEW heading forwards. I'm not saying that at all. I think he's fantastic, but it just seems a bit strange that Jericho would put him in with the other names mentioned there. But on the other hand, maybe Jericho wasn't too familiar with Scorpio Sky before AEW, and only now is he seeing what a great wrestler he is. But Jericho wasn't done there. He said, you haven't seen hardly anything of Dr. Luther yet and all the stuff he can do, which is gonna rustle a few jimmies, I think it's fair to say. Now, if you just sort of dip in and out of AEW or you've not really watched much of it, you might have missed Dr. Luther, who joined as part of the Nightmare Collective, which was Brandy's stable that kind of got axed after a while. It consisted of Brandy Rhodes, Awesome Kong, Mel, Dr. Luther, of course. It was just strange. And the reveal of Dr. Luther was a weird one because AEW had teased that they were going to bring someone into the Nightmare Collective, and then yeah, it was Dr. Luther. He's a figure from the past. He's Jericho's mate, which might explain this quote here, I don't know. And he just didn't seem to fit in with the sort of fresh, up-and-coming, slightly unheralded AEW roster. Since then, he's sort of appeared on Dark a few times. I think he's wrestled the likes of Jimmy Havoc, but he's not really appeared on Dynamite much since that stable folded. In fact, I don't think he's appeared on Dynamite at all since the end of the Nightmare Collective. Now, I wonder what Jericho means here. Does he mean that we've got more to see from Dr. Luther in the ring because he seems, he's not the youngest guy on the roster, he's getting on a bit, or does he mean more from a character perspective, I wonder? He carried on as well anyway, saying the Trent is someone that's going to be very big for us at a certain point. Orange Cassidy is very much a cult figure, but when people start filling up the arenas again, you're going to see him being a lot more popular than he has been. I do agree with that one. I think that Orange Cassidy will absolutely thrive once again in front of a live crowd, and I think the Trent's fantastic too. Poor Chuck Taylor, the only member of the Best Friends not given a shout out there. We love you, Chuck. And of course, Jericho took the time to put over his own boys as well, saying, I think even with the inner circle, Santana, Ortiz, Jake Hager, all these guys have grown a lot since we joined forces. The sky is the limit for them. Interesting thoughts from Jericho there. Let me know which ones you agree with and disagree with in the comments section down below. And then when Dr. Luther wins the AEW World Championship, we can all rejoice together as one big family, and it'll be lovely. And finally, we do have to end on some sad news, as former WWE referee Jack Lotz has passed away at the age of 86, falling victim to the ongoing pandemic. Lotz was a pretty key figure for WWE back in the 70s and 80s, and famously, he officiated 2 huge title changes which changed the entire landscape of WWE. The first of those was Bob Backlund's victory over superstar Billy Graham, which kicked off kind of the Backlund era, and the second one was even more monumental, as Jack Lotz was in charge when Hulk Hogan beat the Iron Sheik to become WWE champion for the first time. It's so sad to see such a well-travelled and respected figure pass away, and we do express our condolences to all of Jack Lotz's friends and family. And that's it for this news video. Thank you very much for watching. My match recommendation today, it has to be Hulk Hogan versus the Iron Sheik, just to see Jack Lotz in that refereeing position and just to see what a match he presided over and what it would do for the entire wrestling industry heading forwards. Thanks very much for watching. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you very soon.